Today, we're going to be discussing a very serious and sensitive topic, gun violence in the United States. This is something FBE has covered in the past, but we felt the need to bring the conversation back as more and more of these events occur. We will not be naming any of the shooters or giving them any attention. This is solely about the discussion of the ongoing issue in America.
It's a genuine epidemic at this point. It used to just be like a scary, like you'd hear about it every once in a while, but at this point it has become casual news.
This happens all the time now. Like I've gotten to the point where I'm just like, it does affect me, but not in the way that it should anymore. And I think that's a problem that a lot of younger people face.
Back then growing up, we didn't really have to worry about shooters or anything like that. Mainly the only thing we really worried about were earthquakes and fires and like lockdown drills at school. And now there's a whole procedure for classes and for students to be prepared when something like this happens.
Having experienced the things that have happened, I think that we need some sort of stricter gun control.
I'm a big opponent of the Second Amendment. I think I should have the right to bear arms, protect my family. Somebody, intruder or something, come to my family, I have the right to protect myself. But I just think AK-47s, AR-15s, only military should have those kind of weapons. What does civilian need the weapons for? Who are you going to war with?
When everyone brings up the argument, it's like, oh, I think the government's gonna take over. Like, I think it's so invalid because think about like already all of the corrupt like things that our government is doing. The government's literally gonna come knocking on our doors and like taking our guns. That's not how that works. That's not how that situation should even be perceived.
I was reading an article and it talked about people being afraid to even go out.
Doing whatever it takes so that, we can have our citizens go to a movie theater or a school or wherever, a Walmart.
Going to the grocery store, just going to get a gallon of milk or something, and somebody comes in and then all of a sudden your entire life is just completely different, completely changed.
Personally, I'm a little sick and tired of someone coming out and going, well, what about my Second Amendment rights? Well, how about my right to live?
We will be showing you laws in other countries, and we'll see if you know the US laws that are comparable. However, every state is a little different, so we'll be focusing only on the laws that apply on a federal level in the US. If you know any state laws that are comparable, please feel free to talk about them.
I have a feeling this might be very depressing.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go out on a limb here real quick, and I'm just gonna say that probably all of these laws that you're about to show do not exist in the United States.
A maximum penalty for aggravated firearms trafficking across national and state borders is life imprisonment.
And for the record, firearm trafficking or arms trafficking is broadly defined as the illicit trade of contraband small arms and ammunition.
That's why Australia has less
Gun violence?
gun
The
violence.
gun violence is low out there?
Yeah, significantly lower.
Yes.
Ever since they had their mass murder in the mid-90s and immediately reacted.
I'm telling you, America, I always say, America, we love our guns out here. The United States would never pass this law right here. This wouldn't even get to the Senate or Congress floor.
Yeah.
They would kill this on sight. Oh, no.
I think this law is acceptable. It's not too crazy, and I think it's right that life imprisonment is.
I think it's a little harsh from my perspective,
Yeah, I mean, it's a
Right?
long time.
So do you know if there's a law like this in the US?
Well, it's firearms trafficking across national and state borders. No, there's not, because you can buy a gun in Nevada and bring it over with no problem.
There is actually no federal US law on firearm trafficking, so basically a person in California, which has really strict gun laws, can buy a gun in a state with more relaxed gun laws and carry it over the state border.
I agree how like states should be able to create their own laws because when it comes to like minimum wage, everyone needs a different one. But I think like when it comes to something that's very important like guns, there should be like federal laws that like are unmovable no matter where you live.
Let's put it this way, it could not hurt to have a universal law across every state, which made it perhaps more challenging for people.
Yeah, absolutely, because there is the loophole with so many states. Like we have individual laws, but we still are one nation as a whole, so we need rules across the board.
We have so many people in all 50 states have a different personality. In California, you have more, city, metro, It's different than people who's from Montana, Wyoming, the cowboys, the hunter, type of thing. So I think that each state is totally different, and I don't think that you can have the agreement of all.
I don't think our country as a whole will even agree to a law such as this, mainly because we're all different.
Northern and Southern California alone is totally different.
I mean, we have to have laws. It's like some people say, well, the bad guys are going to get them anyway. Then why do we have laws in it at all? Drunk driving is a really good, cars don't kill people. Drunk drivers kill people, right? Okay, so did laws stop drunk driving? No, it did not. There are still drunk driving accidents all over the place. But when we started really regulating some things and put tougher laws on drunk driving, the fatality of drunk drivers decreased significantly.
I feel like just overall everything needs to be more strict, and people need to start getting punished for stuff like this, and then maybe people will start getting it through their heads and start listening.
We're only on law 1.
An applicant for a firearm license must pass background checks which consider criminal, mental, addiction, and domestic violence records. I know we do have background checks, and I know I want to say it's something similar, like you can't if you have a criminal record, but there's ways around it, I'm assuming.
But I don't think that's for the whole country. I think that's state specific.
That just feels like common sense.
Background checks, criminal records, mental addiction, and domestic violence.
100%.
110%.
And I think that they should have to renew their license every couple years, and that same background check should be run.
Doing a background check for mental illness and mental like addiction, criminal and domestic violence, like that should definitely be like a basic law that is required in purchasing a firearm.
And there are no background checks for gun shows.
Yeah, gun show loop is 0.
Do you know the US law?
I don't. I know at a federal level, there's a law that's tightening restrictions and background checks that's currently passed the House but will not be heard by the Senate.
I know that some states have background checks, but federally I don't believe there is this law.
Everybody should have to go under like a psych evaluation and everything like that. They should have to fill out why they want the firearm.
Are people going to break the law to get around this and get a gun? Of course. But imagine the drastic amount that you're going to reduce people that shouldn't have guns from getting them. Because it's like adding these different gates, right? Like if I can't get past the first gate because, you know, I've got a criminal background or mental something or whatever, and then they're like, oh, you know what, I can't get a gun, fine, I won't get a gun. And then some people will stop there, right? So now we've already prevented this first layer.
So we do have the Brady Handgun Violence Prevention Act, which requires background checks from specific arm dealers. After the implementation of the National Instant Criminal Background Check System, the transfer of a firearm can be legally completed after 3 days, even if the background check is not completed.
That's ridiculous. 3 days is so short, and you need a lot of time to actually dig up people's records. And like now it's kind of like a free-for-all, especially for background checks. You can look at someone's social media, like their school records, and see lists and lists of things on anybody. Like it's gonna take way longer than that.
So you can get your gun already and the background check hasn't come back yet?
Yeah.
God, I'm a gun owner too.
Yeah, a gun owner too.
I
So this is like,
two guns.
yeah, see, here's the point.
I got 2 handguns.
Yeah.
I had to go through background checks, federal, and I had to wait. I had to wait to get my guns. Like they were like, yo, we go state background check, and then the feds came back and I was like, okay, you're good to go. I was like, cool. Now I bought them in Delaware, where I'm originally from. But when I came here, I had to register them here.
But honestly, like my brother's gotten it done and I've gotten it done. Like our background checks, it's like it takes 10 minutes to do, and it's so easy. They just go in, they run through your stuff, and like that's it.
We don't even federally require you to have a gun license to obtain a gun.
Amazing. I mean, you have to have a license to operate a vehicle. You should have a license to operate any other machine.
Things that could kill you. Yeah. Motorcycles could kill you, could kill somebody else. Yeah. You need a license. A car, you need a license. The idea that a gun has less of a process of education and testing and, you know, going through something to get a license is like insanity.
I disagree. I think you don't really need a gun license to get a gun. I'm a big believer in Second Amendment rights. I think right to bear arms. If I gotta, go get a gun license, somebody come to the house and trying to come get me and my family, I could shoot them right there, dead on the spot. I don't need to be able to practice in the gun range to do that.
I would disagree with that one. I really feel like education would help. I think if you own a gun in this country, especially in this day and age, you need to jump through some hoops to show that you are a responsible citizen, up to and including education. And your mom and dad should sign off on it. I don't care how old you are, Don.
If you look at the research of countries with mass shootings and gun violence based on number of guns they have, America's the leader. So if this helps get rid of guns, that would be a good thing.
And I know the argument for a long time was like, oh, well, criminals aren't going to buy their guns legally. But at this point, like a huge majority of people who have done like shootings and everything have had them legally.
You know where that Brady law came from, right?
I'm not aware.
When President Reagan was shot, one of the guys next by him that was shot in the head was Brady.
Gotcha.
And so it took someone on Reagan's staff to get shot in the head for a Brady law to come about.
It's ridiculous that it has to take somebody important getting injured.
Not a 6-year-old, mind you. We don't do anything if 6-year-olds are massively shot.
If a person has been diagnosed or treated for depression, substance abuse, previously denied a license, accused of domestic violence, or behavioral emotional problems within 5 years prior to applying for a firearm license, they are subject to an investigation.
This is determined if the applicant is fit and proper, mentally stable, potentially has a tendency for violence, or addicted to substances. No, we don't have anything like that.
That's a really good one though, because it's very specific to where if you've had any of this on your record, you're still going to be investigated. And it should be a long process is the thing, this isn't just like a willy-nilly purchase of just like, I need to go buy cereal. Yeah, like, you know what, I'm going to go buy some new shoes and a gun today. Like, it shouldn't be like that.
Do we have anything like this in the US?
No.
I've never heard of it.
When it comes to like our mental health and stuff like that, I think that's something that should be looked into more aggressively than just, a criminal record, because I think a mental diagnosis is something that you can't control at all. And with medications, it does make it worse. So I think that's something that we need to look into harder and, in more detail.
From what I understand, most of the people who's committed, there are certain depressions, they were saying they were bullied by people, they were outcasts, it's a very similar type of situation, all of them, they're experiencing to react to that, they said, I had enough of it, and this is what I'm gonna do. Laws and rules is good, but you need to do prevention before get to that point.
Do you know if our background checks are this extensive?
Heck no.
No, they're not.
I went to the gun shop to got my guns, and I had to wait like 10 days.
But did they investigate you, or did they ask you any of these questions? Like,
the dude said they're doing once you do your application, he's like, they're doing the background checks. We'll call you in like 7 days, make sure you're good. So I'm like, I don't even know what they did. So all I can think of they did is they just went, make sure you had no criminal history, make sure you probably had no felonies or anything like that, or anything crazy. And that's probably it.
The mental health crisis in America is also just like a big thing as well, because it's not taken seriously because it's an invisible illness. Going back to the past things that have happened, they were very much premeditated, and I don't believe that they were a result from mental illness. And I don't think that you necessarily have to have a mental illness or be depressed or whatever to plan something out and go do something as horrible as that. It was just an anger-driven racist thing.
And racism is not a mental disorder.
No.
That's a learned thing. And all these people spouting off their big pie hole that says it's not a gun issue, it's a mental issue. Okay, great. Let's throw a ton of money at getting people help mentally instead of cutting it.
demonizing mentally ill people, like if you have a mental illness, you're gonna go mow down, a movie theater full of people or kids at a concert or school, like.
But you do agree that mental ill people shouldn't be able to get access.
100%.
If you've been diagnosed with it, if you've been diagnosed.
Mental illness is not why people shoot guns. People shoot guns because they have guns.
Well, and statistically, the deal is if there's a gun around, it's going to get used, particularly on suicide. So and sometimes I feel like the whole mental health thing is kind of used as an excuse.
Absolutely.
So instead of saying, this is domestic terrorism, it's, it's a mental health issue. Maybe it's a mental health issue for everyone.
While we have background checks on individuals who cannot get guns, we don't have the same emphasis on persons with mental illnesses. We focus on criminal backgrounds, persons discharged from armed forces, persons charged with domestic abuse, and being committed to a mental institution.
It's one of those things, not every person that has a mental illness or that has tendencies to do said things or have like said intentions has been diagnosed or has done anything before that's documented.
And I think the issue is that a lot of people don't get help, so it is a harder thing to do a background check on, which is why it should be a longer process, because you should have to evaluate someone's mental sanity.
How do you just determine mental health? Is it I'm gonna be honest and put it on my record, check here if you've ever, and people aren't going to be honest about that. So it becomes kind of an issue of behavioral emotional problems. How does that manifest? What's the criteria for that?
I don't know what kind of database and law enforcement that you're going to have to track everything that is come across. Even though you have the law set up, I don't think that any agency able to carry through.
It's also very hard to qualify, because I had middle school students who I tried to get help for because I felt that they had mental health issues. And when you have a parent bucking you on that, it becomes a very challenging issue, where it becomes, well, you don't like my kid because you're saying there's an issue there. So it has to be something that we remove some of the stigma that says, oh, there's something wrong with you. And it's a support system, and it's fixable.
I think anyone can benefit from help. Anyone, even if you're completely fine, have never had an issue in your life, everyone can benefit from some sort of help. I've been going to therapy since I was, I think, 12, and I have never stopped going. And it's just, even points in my life I'm completely fine, it's still like the most refreshing thing, like of my, like every couple weeks to be like, okay, I'm gonna sit down and sort out my mental health.
The challenge with having that in the United States is now take a look at how many police officers are brought up on charges of domestic abuse or complaints of domestic violence. Now you've got yourself into a little pickle. Because if you say people who have domestic violence history can't have firearms, and you have a lot of, not all obviously, but a pretty good percentage of police officers who have domestic violence in their history, now what do you do?
Possession of a gun may not be permitted if a relative or spouse living with the applicant can be expected to pose a threat to the life or property of other persons. Within reason. Oh, there's an interesting clause. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but doesn't Japan have a very low number of guns in the country?
They have been regulating guns roughly since the 17th century.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So,
Okay.
so guns there the problem there must be suicides then.
I don't know how difficult it is to purchase a gun in Japan, but I know, like say, in some other area, every bullet they have to record it, that you purchase,
Yeah, in Vietnam, they're very strict with their gun laws.
Exactly, and most of the guns on the street is illegal.
I feel like it could be something in some states, but I don't think it's a federal law.
I'm gonna go with they don't even have it in states, because then that would require a background check.
That's true.
Or an interview even with people who live with the applicant.
There is no federal equivalent.
The Sandy Hook shooter, his mom owned the guns, but he was mentally ill, but she was fine. She was at work.
If you know you're a person you're living with is mentally unstable and you have guns around and they're accessible to that person, you're culpable.
I think that's also another thing that we should incorporate into gun laws is having safes that, are fireproof, and, there's some that are like explosion proof, and they're not even that expensive. Like, yes, they're $100 to $200, but you're also ensuring that your son doesn't accidentally grab the gun, or your son doesn't go on a rampage, or somebody else, you know what I mean? So, I'm taking a more conservative side when it comes to this law, just because, like I said, I think something else that we can do that this law is just too vague. I just don't agree with it.
I think it should be a little bit more strict as well, because it does endanger the people in the household, and endangers the neighborhood and the people around them.
Do you think we could implement something like this in the US if we looked into it?
I think this would be a great additive, because you should look into the people around you. I think I read something that was, if a woman has a gun in her house, she's 10 times more likely to die from gun violence. Yeah. The reason a lot of people do own guns is to protect yourself. So the fact that I can put you back in more danger is very scary.
Yes, and remember, anything you protect yourself with can ultimately be used against you.
What are your thoughts on the Second Amendment?
So it's a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed.
I think law, like myself, law-abiding citizen, I believe you should, in your house, you should be able to keep, bear arms in it. I mean, I think certain guns, like handguns, certain guns I think should be outlawed, but I think you have a right to protect your family, protect yourself in case of intruder or something should happen inside your house.
This simple sentence is what the NRA and people that think it's okay to have military grade weapons hang their hat on. Shall not be infringed, period. It's non-negotiable. That's one gun is all guns. One musket from the 1700s is an AK-47.
Yeah, there's definitely a difference between
Right,
what
exactly.
the military uses
And it
what
doesn't-
our homes should
Right.
have.
If you can kill 9 people in 30 seconds, that's a problem. And
If you're looking for something that can do that, why?
This was done
It was done long ago.
200 some years ago when we were fighting with the British. That we do need to, bear arms, in case they attack us. It's a totally different time.
Times have changed.
Exactly.
We don't need this.
I don't want a gun, but it doesn't mean I want to say that nobody should have guns. But there has to be something put into place to help us get somewhere better that we're not shooting each other. Whatever time you feel like was the good old days, we're not there. It's done, it's over. We have to change the way we treat each other or we'll never fix these problems.
Yes, it is your right to have that gun. It is your right to have that handgun. It's your right to have that rifle and that shotgun. But God damn it, you're gonna have to go through some things. You're gonna have to get a license, you're gonna have to get a background check. You're not gonna be able to get that gun until that license and background check come back. You're gonna have to wait 2 weeks. You're gonna have to wait 2 weeks until you get ammunition for it as well. And every year, you have to renew your license.
We're not trying to take away your guns or your right to have them. We're just trying to make it stricter so these guns can't get in the wrong hands. Like you said, everybody should have to go through this extensive background check and have to go through a psych evaluation and have to get the right documentation and the right paperwork and the right license and have to renew it every single year because one, things can change, your intentions can change, you as a person can change.
We are still a democracy, so that's kind of the beautiful thing. We can believe in our constitutional right, we can we can preserve the Second Amendment and still change things so that it's not so simple to kill people.
You can keep these guns, but we want to take away these certain guns. That's it.
The president, in a recent address, has proposed red flag laws, which would allow law enforcement to take guns away from individuals who are believed to be a threat to themselves or others. This is also supported by gun control groups and mental health advocates. However, they believe it will not solve the problem. How would you feel about a law like this?
Well, I mean, the fact of the matter is nothing's going to ever solve the problem. So if you're looking for that, oh, this one thing is going to solve the problem, then you're an idiot. We have to go at this. Let's start there. But the thing is all these people are getting killed and nobody's doing anything. Nobody's doing anything.
sometimes I feel like it's just rhetoric. And every time there's a tragedy, we talk about it and we talk about it and we draw committees and the committees are going to talk about it some more. And I go, at some point, something has to happen.
We're going to stand by and watch the weaponry get more and more sophisticated, the carnage more and more, the children petrified. I mean, my daughter has post-traumatic stress disorder because she hid under a desk. Sincerely. There was a kid that brought a gun to school. And she wasn't in an active shooting situation. I can't even imagine what those children who survived that or the families that lost their children go through every single day to listen to nonsense. That we have to preserve some antiquated bullshit law from the beginning of time.
Oh, wow.
You have kids almost voters in Parkland, Florida, and
They still
they
was
fought so hard and brought a nation to its knees, weeping, and nothing changed.
you want to get these politicians out of office? Go to the election, vote.
You've learned quite a bit about how other countries do things and how they compare to us. Do you think some of these laws would work here?
Hell yeah, they can work.
Of course.
Domestic violence, if somebody been accused of domestic violence, boom. You know what I mean? It's all type of red flags we could do, put them laws in it. But they're not gonna pass them things in Washington.
You have to get out and vote. You have to.
I grew up in the country, and it was common. It was common to go to a friend's house and the parents had, or the dad or whatever, had a gun in the home. I was taken out to shoot the guns so I could learn as a kid how to properly operate a gun. And I was definitely told, the consequences of what could happen.
I think it comes down to education when it comes to guns. If you raise a kid on a gun and you teach them exactly, the dangers of it, how to operate one and stuff like that, you're less likely to see these things happen. There are some things that we can do that will have a huge impact and that maybe a lot of people won't like, but it's something that we have to do. Like, for example, the Australia law that, literally if you get caught smuggling anything, you're screwed.
I think the one from Australia is not going to work here. Life imprisonment, to have either guns or bullets type, except, all the accessory that goes with it.
I do agree with South Africa's laws with a lot of background checks, a lot of tests to make sure this person is mentally stable to own a firearm. I will believe that guns don't kill people. I do believe that people kill people, and that's why I do believe that there should be stricter laws and regulations for people who want to purchase a firearm or people who have them.
We should, advocate and implement it, perhaps, and take it slowly. It's going to take a while for people to accept and adjust and getting used to. It's just like anything else, people need to get used to it.
I think we need something larger scale at the moment because the difference between their laws and our laws is we already have so many guns in our country. Our issue needs to be how do we control what's currently happening, and then how do we also regulate the continuous purchases.
Anything would be better than nothing.
Yes.
Start with doing something instead of just talking about it. And whatever law that you make, someone's going to be unhappy about.
Yeah.
But at some point you go, you know what?
It's better than nothing.
And it isn't just going to solve mass shootings, it's going to solve all the shootings that are going on all over the country.
I lived in Orlando for about 15 years, and the Pulse shooting, I mean, that was in the backyard. When you're so close to it, it's just a moment of like, how is this real? Like, is this a dream? And then you start to see people posting things or friends that had friends that are now gone.
My best friend was killed point blank at her own concert, Christina Grimmie. She was an amazing person, first of all. For some reason, security let this sketchy ass guy into the venue where I believe he was wearing a trench coat from what I read in the police report. She loved everybody. I mean, everybody. She had nothing but love in her heart. And so she goes to hug this guy, and she was shot, I think, twice in the abdomen and once in the head. The gunman tried to pull his gun out and shoot Christina's brother as well, but it jammed, and then he freaked out and pushed himself against the wall and then killed himself. Just innocent lives in general are taken in literally just a split second, so senselessly, because any person with any intention ever can own a gun. She was on The Voice. She was doing more and more shows. She had toured with Rachel Platten. She was amazing and talented and kind and had just everything in the world going for her, and it was ended for no reason. There is actually a charity called the Christina Grimmie Foundation in Christina's honor, and all of the proceeds go toward helping victims and families of victims of gun violence, whether it be helping them get therapy for their PTSD or whatever they need it for, helping pay their mortgage, helping pay funeral costs, helping pay any bills, groceries, whatever.
Thank you so much for being strong enough to share that.
Thank you. I'm gonna give you one.